Concepts in configuration management. In this video, we are going to see about concepts in configuration management. Following is a list of some of these functions along with scenarios where they might be needed. These functions are more detailed than the CM functions defined in. Give the states of the programs. You need this information to decide when to start testing or when to release the software. Give the latest version of a program. Suppose that a program must be modified. Clearly, the modification must be carried out in the latest version, otherwise earlier changes may be lost. Handle concurrent update requests. Two programmers, in response to two different change requests, might change the same program concurrently. One of the changes could potentially override the other change. Avoiding such a situation requires access controls so that only one person can make changes to a program at a time. If multiple parallel changes are allowed, reconciliation procedures should be implemented to ensure that all changes are reflected in the final version. Undo a program change. A change is made to a program to implement a change request, but later a need arises to reverse this change request. Provide a traceability between requirement change requests and program changes. Suppose a requirement change request dictates that 3 programs be modified and these modifications have been assigned to 3 team members. Undo a requirement change. A requirement change request that was implemented by changing many programs may later need to be undone, perhaps because the users do not like the new features. Show associated changes. Suppose a bug is found in a program and it is suspected that this bug came from the implementation of a change request. It is desirable to review all changes made as a result of that change request. Gather all sources, documents, and other information for the current system. As a result of file corruption or a system crash, it might be necessary to recover all files. Similarly, a change to an existing system, one that is in operation, might be needed, making it essential to obtain all source files and documents that represent the current system. These mechanisms include the following: conventions for naming and organization of files, version control, access control, change request traceability, reconciliation procedures, modification of login programs. During the normal course of a project, a document passes through 3 states: under development, under review, baselined. The state transition is straightforward and similar to the one proposed in with-gift. The CM process must also implement the state diagram for documents. Operational aspects of configuration management are identification, control, status accounting, audit and review. The configuration management process. In this video, we are going to see about the configuration management process. The configuration management process defines a sequence of activities that must be performed in support of the configuration management mechanisms. The project manager or the configuration controller (CC) of the project prepares this plan. Then the process must be executed, perhaps by deploying a tool, the use of which also must be planned. Finally, because any configuration management plan requires discipline on the part of the project personnel in terms of maintaining versions, storing items in proper locations and making changes properly, monitoring the status of the configuration items, and performing CM audits are therefore other activities in the configuration management process. This aspect of configuration management is primarily concerned with the definition and control of configuration management activities during the entire software development and maintenance processes. First of all, roles and responsibilities should be defined for such activities. These not only involve software configuration management (SCM) managers and affect the work of developers, but also that of testers, quality assurance staff, and project managers. One process task is therefore to define who does what, how, and when. A lifecycle should be defined in order to line up the configuration items or its elements with the output products of each phase. This allows SCM activities to be integrated within the general framework of the development process and to comply with the requirements of the quality system if there is one in place. The evolution of a component is therefore tracked with respect to the expected phases of development. Process management also relates to documentation support. This implies defining procedures and methods to ensure the traceability from requirements to specifications, to code, and back to requirements. The relationship between documentation and code must also be defined. Finally, process management relates explicitly to the way testing support is provided, that is, how traceability from requirements to tests is maintained, and how tests are handled with respect to code. Software configuration management systems comprise a set of procedures and tools that help implement the criteria for both configuration and product management processes. Planning and setting up configuration management. In this video, we are going to see about planning and setting up configuration management. Planning and setting up configuration management. Planning for configuration management involves identifying the configuration items and specifying the procedures to be used for controlling and implementing changes to them. Identifying configuration items is a fundamental activity in any type of CM. Typical examples of configuration items include requirement specification, design documents, source code, test plans, test scripts, test procedures, test data, standards used in the project such as coding standards and design standards, the acceptance plan, documents such as the CM plan and the project plan, user documentation such as the user manual, and documents such as the training material, contract documents including support tools such as a compiler or in-house tools, quality records, review records, test records, and CM records, that is release records, status tracking records. Any customer supply products or purchased items that will be a part of the delivery called included software product are also configuration items. During planning, the types of items that come under the aegis of CM are identified, but a detailed list of items is not prepared. This omission reflects the fact that some items may not be known during CM planning, which occurs at the beginning of the project. To facilitate proper naming of configuration items, the naming conventions for CM items are established during the CM planning stages. In addition to naming standards, Project managers must plan version numbering. When a configuration item is changed, the old item is not replaced with a new copy. Instead, the old copy is maintained and a new one is created. This approach results in multiple versions of an item, so policies for version of an item, policies for version number assignment are needed. If a CM tool is being used, sometimes the tool handles the version numbering, otherwise it must be explicitly handled in the project. During planning, the project manager must decide how to maintain the state of a program. One way of collecting items in different states is to create separate directories for them. All items in a certain state reside in the directory for that state. When the state of a program changes, that program is moved from the directory of the old state to the directory of the new state. This approach is a general one and does not require the use of any tool to maintain the state information. If a configuration management tool is available, however, the directory structure needed for managing the states of programs depends on the tool. During the planning phase, project managers must set the directory structure employed for managing the states, keeping in mind the requirements of the configuration management tool, if any. The configuration controller or the project manager does the configuration management planning. It is begun only when the project has been initiated and the operating environment and requirement specification are clearly documented. The activities in this stage include the following. Identify configuration items, including customer supplied and purchased items. Define a naming and numbering scheme for the configuration items. Define the directory structure needed for CM. Define access restrictions. Define change control procedures. Identify and define the responsibility and authority of the Configuration Control (CC) or Configuration Control Board (CCB). Define a method for tracking the status of configuration items. Define a backup procedure. Define a reconciliation procedure if needed. Define a release procedure. Define an archival procedure. Identify points at which the configuration items will be moved to the baseline. The output of this phase is the CM plan. The CC is responsible for the implementation of the CM plan. Depending on the size of the system under development, the CC's role may be a part-time or a full-time job. The CC can also be responsible for managing the release, archiving the release, retrieving and releasing appropriate versions when required, and more. For example, the programmer's access and right to modify a program in the baseline must be limited. Planning activities must therefore specify the access rights of the CC, the project manager, and the developers. Policies and procedures for change control are also established during planning. This includes controlling normal changes that take place during the lifecycle as well as changes that are driven by requirement changes. Normal changes are generally managed through a library mechanism and directory structure. Changes due to requirement change requests, which may necessitate that many programs be changed, or frequently tracked through a spreadsheet that lists all items that must be changed as well as the directory for each item, thereby giving its state. If project managers allow concurrent updates to programs, they must specify reconciliation procedures. Concurrent updates are sometimes necessary. For example, suppose a high priority change request comes in at the same time that another change request is being implemented. Clearly, the new change request cannot be put on hold until the first one is finished. Similarly, if problems occur in the working system while a change request is being implemented, then changes must be made immediately to ensure that the system can continue to function. For such situations, reconciliation procedures are needed. One possible procedure is to state that the differences between the original version and the new versions will be examined, and the changes in the version having fewer changes will be merged in the other version. If the changes affect different parts of the program, merging is straightforward. Some CM tools readily support this capability. Otherwise, the programmer must review the overlap and then accommodate both changes. All elements of the plan are documented in the CM plan. Perform configuration control. In this video, we are going to see about perform configuration control. Although configuration control activities are undertaken during the execution phase of the project, we discuss them here along with other aspects of CM. Two main configuration control activities are performed, one that deals with managing the state transitions of programs and documents, and one that deals with managing the change requests that must be implemented. State transition management involves moving the items from one directory to another when the state changes and then creating versions when changes are made. Frequently, tools are used to manage the states and versions of items and access to them. Many CM tools employ the check-in, check-out procedure for controlling access and handling version control. The basic idea behind this approach is as follows. A program is considered to be in a controlled environment when it is in any state in which others can use it. Once a program is in the controlled environment, it cannot be modified even by the original author without proper authorization because others may be using it. To make an approved change, the developer must check the program out of the control environment. Checking out essentially implies making a copy of the item without destroying the earlier version and making a note that the item has been checked out. An item is modified after it has been checked out. The modification must then be reflected in the controlled environment so that others have the benefit of the new version, and so the change request, which may have forced the changes, can be truly implemented. because other team members may be using the item. Some checks are done to ensure that the changed item is suitable before it is checked back in. When an item is checked back into the controlled environment, the older copy is not destroyed. Instead, a new version is created. Often, only the CC or the project leader can check items in. This limitation makes it possible to roll back the changes if the need arises. To provide information about changes that have been made, project managers can opt to keep a modification log in the program's source itself. This log essentially identifies the start and end of a change and includes a reference to the change request that prompted it. All these tasks, checking in, checking out, version maintenance, and creation of a modification log, can be handled through the use of proper CM tools. Various tools are available that perform many aspects of this CM library function. To implement requirement changes, which in turn trigger changes to configuration items, a change request is first analyzed by performing an impact analysis. This analysis determines the programs and documents that need to be changed and the cost and schedule implications of making the change. Once the change is approved by the project leader and the CC, all programs and documents identified in the impact analysis must be changed appropriately. The following activities are part of implementing a change request. Accept a change request with impact analysis. Set up a tracking mechanism. Check out configuration items that need to be changed. Perform the changes. Check in the configuration items. Take the item through its life cycle. A spreadsheet-based mechanism is frequently used for tracking the status of change requests. For each change request, a spreadsheet is created that lists all the programs being changed and their status. To implement a change, the CC or CCB assigns modification to different items as tasks to members of the team who check the items out so as to make these changes. After a team member makes a change, the changed program or document can be viewed as a new program that must go through different states, representing the life cycle of the program before it can become part of the final in operation system. Once all altered programs and their associated documents reach the baseline after following their life cycle, the change request is considered to be fully implemented. Status monitoring and audits. In this video, we are going to see about status monitoring and audits. A configuration item can exist in one of several states. The set of possible states varies according to whether the item is a program or a document and the type of CM tools being used. It is important to accurately represent the state of each item because state-related mistakes can lead to problems. For example, if a program has not been unit tested but is moved to the state ready for release, it can cause problems. Similarly, if the system fails to reflect the fact that a program has been checked out from the baseline to implement a change, the software might be delivered without the change. Thus, when a requirement change request is implemented, it is also important that the mechanisms used to capture the state accurately represent the state. If project use a mechanism based on a directory structure to represent the state of a program, mistakes are possible. This type of mechanism requires that the programs be moved properly from one directory to another when their state changes, and that the change of state be reflected in the master table that maintains the states of the various items. The project's configuration controller generally conducts the CM audits. After a CM audit, a report is usually issued that lists what needs to be done to keep the CM activities consistent with the CM plan. Table shows an example of the CM audit report for the ACIC project.